There is someone in your life who has wounded you more deeply than anyone else. You know exactly who I am speaking of. Perhaps it was the parent who could not love you the way your heart cried out to be loved. Perhaps it was the friend who betrayed your trust when you were most vulnerable. Perhaps it was the beloved who abandoned you when you needed them most. And here is what troubles you in the quiet moments. Why them? Why did this person of all people have the power to shatter you? Why could they reach into your chest and twist your heart in ways that strangers never could? I want you to lean closer now, because what I am about to share will change not just how you see that person, but how you see every wound, every betrayal, every inexplicable hurt that has ever carved itself into your soul. These people are not accidents. They are not random. They are not even your enemies. They are your greatest teachers sent by the universe itself to free you from chains you did not even know you were wearing. Sitchin value proposition. The promise you see. For years you have been asking the wrong question. You have been asking, why did this happen to me? When the question that unlocks everything is this: what is this person here to teach me? Because embedded in your deepest pain is your deepest purpose. The people who hurt you most are holding up a mirror to the exact places within you that are still asleep, still wounded, still chained to old stories from lifetimes you cannot even remember. And today I am going to show you how to read that mirror. I am going to reveal the karmic mathematics of pain, the soul contracts you signed before you ever drew breath in this body, and the sacred technology hidden inside your worst heartbreak. By the time we finish this conversation, you will understand that every person who wounded you was actually offering you your liberation. You will learn to recognize your karmic assignments disguised as your betrayers. You will discover why you keep attracting the same lesson in different bodies. And most importantly, you will learn the ancient practice I have used to transform relationship poison into spiritual medicine. This is not philosophy. This is the engineering of the soul. And it begins with a truth that will sound impossible until you feel it in your bones. Story Teaching My Part 2 to Part 1. The recognition. When I was younger, there was a man I trusted completely. He was like a brother to me, closer than blood, closer than bone. We had walked together through years of seeking, through doubt and revelation, through the fire of transformation. I would have given him anything. I did give him everything. My trust, my vulnerability, my open heart. And one day, without warning, without reason I could understand, he turned on me. He spoke lies about me. He took my confidence and weaponized it. He turned others against me, with such precision, such calculated cruelty, that I found myself lying awake at night, wondering if I had ever truly known him at all. The pain was extraordinary, not the sharp pain of a sudden wound, but the deep grinding agony of a foundation crumbling beneath you. I could not eat. I could not find peace in meditation. The betrayal lived in my body like a sickness, and every person I spoke to offered me the same hollow comfort. Forget him. He is not worth your energy. He showed you who he really is. Move on. But I could not move on. Something in me knew there was a deeper teaching here, something far more profound than the simple story of a bad man doing a bad thing. So I went into silence. I went into the deepest meditation I knew how to access, and I asked the universe directly, why him? Why did you send this person to hurt me? What am I not seeing? And what came back was so startling, so complete, so devastating in its truth, that I wept for 3 days straight. The universe showed me a memory that was not from this lifetime. It showed me another body, another century, another version of myself. And in that life, I was the betrayer. I was the one who had turned on him. The details were different, the circumstances were different, but the energy signature was identical. I had wounded him with the same precision, the same coldness, the same calculated destruction that he had just delivered to me. We were not enemies. We were balancing the books. Basich Story Teaching Part 2. The mechanism. Now listen carefully, because this is where most people lose the thread. Karma is not punishment. It is not some angry cosmic accountant, tallying up your sins and delivering retribution. Karma is intelligence. It is the universe's profound commitment to your evolution, to the expansion of your consciousness, to your eventual recognition that you are not separate from anything or anyone. When you hurt someone, you create a vibrational imprint. Think of it like a frequency that gets embedded in your soul's blueprint. That frequency carries a very specific quality of unconsciousness, a specific blindness, a specific way in which you could not see the other person's humanity. And the universe, in its infinite wisdom and infinite compassion, will recreate the exact conditions necessary for you to experience what you inflicted. Not to punish you, but to teach you. Not to hurt you, but to complete you. You must understand, you cannot truly evolve past a consciousness you have never inhabited. If you have been the betrayer, you must know what it feels like to be betrayed. If you have been cold, you must know what it feels like to stand in the cold. If you have abandoned, you must know the taste of abandonment. This is not cruelty. This is completeness. The soul seeks wholeness above all else, and wholeness means experiencing all perspectives, walking in all shoes, knowing intimately what it means to be both the arrow and the target. So when someone hurts you deeply, when someone wounds you in a way that feels disproportionate, inexplicable, devastating beyond reason, you are not experiencing random violence. You are experiencing remembering. Your soul recognizes this frequency. Your soul knows this pain because somewhere, somewhen, you delivered it. And now you get to complete the circuit. Now you get to learn what you could not learn when you were on the other side. Now you get to develop the compassion, the awareness, the consciousness that will ensure you never create this frequency again. Butches, Stories Teaching Minchu, Part 3. Why it hurts so much it. But here is what makes this almost unbearable: to accept the people who hurt you most are the people you loved most. Your soul does not waste time with strangers. Your soul does not sign karmic contracts with random people who pass through your life like ghosts. No, your soul seeks out the beings you have history with, the souls you have danced with across dozens, hundreds, thousands of lifetimes. These are your soul family, your soul cluster, the group of beings you incarnate with again and again, trading roles like actors in an eternal play, each time learning something new about love, about consciousness, about the vast spectrum of human experience. The parent who could not love you correctly, you have been parent and child to each other 100 times. The friend who betrayed you, you have been allies and enemies, teachers and students, lovers and strangers across centuries. The beloved who abandoned you, you have found and lost each other in more ways than your conscious mind can hold. Why do you think it hurts so much? Why do you think a word from them can destroy you while a stranger's cruelty rolls off your back? Because your soul recognizes them, your soul knows this being, and your soul remembers, somewhere beneath your conscious awareness, that you have work to do together, lessons to complete, frequencies to balance. The depth of your pain is proportional to the depth of your history. The intensity of your hurt reveals the intensity of your connection. These are not your tormentors. These are your spiritual assignment partners. These are the brave souls who agreed to wear the villain's mask so you could learn what you came here to learn. Basich's Stories Teaching Minchu Part 4. The Contract. Before you were born, before you took on this flesh, before you forgot who you truly are, your soul sat in council with other souls. I know this sounds like fantasy. I know your rational mind wants to reject this, but stay with me. In this pre-birth space, you looked at your soul's curriculum. You examined the frequencies you still carried that were limiting your expansion. You identified the lessons you had not yet mastered. And then here is the extraordinary part. You asked for help. You asked specific souls, souls you trusted completely, souls you loved beyond measure, to come into your life and create the exact conditions necessary for your evolution. Think about that for a moment. The person who hurt you may have loved you so much, on a soul level, that they agreed to be hated by you. They agreed to carry the weight of your anger, your resentment, your bitterness, so that you could learn something you could not learn any other way. They agreed to play the villain in your story, so you could become the hero of your own consciousness. This is not metaphor. This is how the universe operates. This is how souls evolve. We learn through contrast. We learn through friction. We learn by having our unhealed places pressed on, until we can no longer ignore them. And we need other beings to apply that pressure, to hold up the mirror, to trigger the exact wounds that are ready to be healed. Your mother's coldness might have been her gift to you, teaching you self-sufficiency, forcing you to learn to love yourself when no one else would. Your father's absence might have been his sacrifice, creating the space for you to develop independence, to find your own authority, to stop seeking validation outside yourself. Your partner's betrayal might have been their soul's way of saying, you are ready now, ready to stop abandoning yourself, ready to stop betraying your own truth, ready to learn what real love actually is. Teaching Meeks Part 5. The patterns reveal everything, and this is how you know I am telling you the truth. Look at the patterns. Look at the ways you get hurt over and over again. Do you keep attracting people who abandon you? That is not bad luck. That is a frequency you are carrying, calling in the same lesson until you finally learn it. Do you keep encountering people who betray your trust? Your soul is giving you multiple opportunities to heal your relationship with trust, to learn discernment, to develop boundaries, to stop giving your power away. Do you keep falling for people who cannot fully love you? The universe is showing you again and again that you have not yet learned to fully love yourself. The repetition is not punishment. The repetition is compassion. The universe will give you the same test as many times as necessary, until you pass it. and passing it does not mean avoiding the test. Passing it means seeing it clearly, understanding what it is teaching you, and integrating the lesson so completely that you no longer emit the frequency that attracts it. Think of it this way: you are a radio tower constantly broadcasting a signal. That signal is composed of your beliefs, your wounds, your unhealed traumas, your unconscious patterns, your fears, your self-concepts. And the universe responds to your signal by sending you people and situations that match that frequency. If you are broadcasting, "I am not worthy of love," the universe will send you people who treat you as unworthy, not to confirm that story, but to give you the chance to see it, to question it, to ultimately reject it and rewrite it. If you are broadcasting "people always leave me," you will attract people who leave. Not because the universe is cruel, but because the universe is trying to show you that you are the one creating this pattern, you are the one holding this belief, and you have the power to change it. The people who hurt you are not the problem, they are the symptoms. They are the visible manifestation of an invisible frequency you are carrying. And once you heal that frequency, once you shift that signal, the same types of people will either stop appearing in your life, or they will appear, and you will not be wounded by them anymore. You will see them clearly, you will have compassion for them, but they will not be able to hook you, to break you, to make you doubt your worth ever again. I said Teaching Mainaka, Part 6, The Mirror Principle. Every person in your life is a mirror. This is not poetry, this is mechanism. The people who trigger you most intensely are showing you exactly what you have not yet made peace with inside yourself. The friend who lied to you is mirroring the ways you lied to yourself. The partner who cannot commit is reflecting your own inability to fully commit to your path, your purpose, your truth. The parent who judged you mercilessly is showing you how harshly you judge yourself. This is difficult to accept because we want our pain to be someone else's fault. We want to be innocent victims of other people's cruelty. And yes, their behavior is their responsibility. Yes, what they did was wrong. I am not excusing harm. I am not suggesting you should tolerate abuse. What I am saying is that on a deeper level, on the soul level, they are not in your life randomly. They are in your life specifically because your soul is ready to see something, to heal something, to transform something that you could not access any other way. I will give you an example from my own life. There was a period where I encountered person after person who dismissed my ideas, who treated my insights as foolish, who made me feel small and stupid. For months I allowed this to wound me. I would replay conversations in my mind, thinking of what I should have said, how I could have proven my worth. I felt victimized by their judgment. But one morning, during meditation, a realization arrived like lightning. These people were not random, they were mirrors. Every single one of them was reflecting back to me my own relationship with my intelligence, my own doubt about whether my thoughts had value. I had been walking around with a hidden belief that I was not smart enough, not educated enough, not credible enough. And the universe in its perfect wisdom sent me person after person to show me that wound so I could finally heal it. The moment I saw this, everything shifted. I stopped needing them to validate me. I stopped arguing in my mind with their dismissals. Instead, I turned inward and asked, why do I need external approval of my intelligence? Where did I abandon trust in my own mind? And as I healed that internal fracture, those people either disappeared from my life entirely, or their behavior toward me completely transformed. Some even became supporters. But here is what matters most. I changed. My inner world shifted, and that is the entire point. This is what I mean when I say difficult people are assignments. They are not punishments. They are not signs that you are cursed or unlucky. They are precision instruments, delivered by your own higher consciousness, to reveal where you still need to grow, where you still need to forgive, where you still need to love yourself more deeply. And I want to be very clear about something, because this teaching is often misunderstood. When I say these people are mirrors and assignments, I am not saying you should tolerate abuse. I am not saying you should stay in harmful situations and simply meditate your way through the pain. Boundaries are sacred. Removing yourself from toxicity is often the most spiritually mature choice you can make. What I am saying is this: before you leave, or even if you have already left, do the inner work. See the mirror. Extract the lesson, because if you don't, I promise you, the same pattern will show up again with a different face. And here's what nobody tells you about that mirror. It's not a one-time reflection, it's constant, it's relentless. Every person who triggers you, every situation that makes you react disproportionately, every moment when you feel that familiar ache in your chest, That's the mirror doing its work. I've watched people go through 5, 6, 7 relationships, each time blaming the other person. They were too needy. They were emotionally unavailable. They didn't appreciate me. And every single time underneath those different faces, the same core wound was screaming for attention, the abandonment, the unworthiness, the fear of not being enough. The universe isn't punishing you with repetition, it's teaching you through it. Think about it like this: when you're learning to play an instrument, you don't play a song once and call yourself a musician. You practice the same scales, the same chords, over and over, until they become second nature. Heartbreak works the same way. The lesson keeps repeating until you finally integrate it, until it becomes part of your cellular understanding. But here's the shift that changes everything. When you stop seeing your ex as the villain, and start seeing them as a teacher, the entire narrative transforms. This doesn't mean what they did was okay. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior or abuse. Absolutely not. It means you reclaim your power from victimhood, and step into the role of the student who's here to learn. I remember sitting in my car, one night months after everything fell apart, and I had this moment of brutal clarity. I realized that I had been performing my entire relationship. Performing happiness, performing confidence, performing like I didn't need reassurance, when inside I was desperately seeking validation. And she responded to the performance, not to the real me, because I never showed her the real me. That wasn't her failure, that was mine. See, we teach people how to love us by what we accept, by what we tolerate, by what we pretend is okay when it's eating us alive inside. And if you were accepting breadcrumbs while pretending you wanted a feast, that's information. That's the lesson. Your worth wasn't being reflected back to you, because you weren't standing in it yourself. So let's get radically honest here. How many times did you silence your own needs, because you feared they'd be too much? How many times did you laugh off something that hurt you, because calling it out felt uncomfortable? How many times did you accept behavior you'd never tolerate in someone else's story, because, well, maybe you were the exception? That's not love. That's negotiation. That's emotional bartering. And you can't barter your way into someone's heart. Here's what I want you to understand. The right person doesn't require you to minimize yourself to fit. They don't need you smaller, quiet, or less demanding. The right connection doesn't feel like you're constantly auditioning for a role you're not sure you'll get. When someone truly values you, your needs aren't inconveniences. Your boundaries aren't obstacles. Your feelings aren't dramatic. They're just part of the package, part of the whole person they chose to show up for. And if that wasn't your experience, it's not because you asked for too much. It's because you were offering your fullness to someone only interested in fractions. Think about that. You brought your whole self, your whole heart, your authentic needs and desires, and they kept trying to convince you that half presence was enough. That inconsistency was passion. That breadcrumbs were a feast. But you knew better. Deep down you knew. Maybe you ignored it because the hope felt better than the truth. Maybe you stayed because the potential seemed more real than the pattern. Maybe you kept trying because walking away felt like admitting you'd been wrong about them, about the connection, about what you thought you were building together. But here's the thing. You weren't wrong about the love you were capable of giving. You weren't wrong about the connection you were willing to create. You were just offering it to someone who couldn't match you. And that mismatch, that fundamental difference in capacity and willingness, that's what kept you stuck. Because here's what I want you to understand. The right person won't make you feel crazy for wanting connection. They won't make you second-guess your need for emotional intimacy. They won't treat your vulnerability like it's a burden they have to tolerate. The right person will meet you there, not perfectly, not without effort, but willingly, enthusiastically, like someone who sees the value in what you're offering instead of someone who's doing you a favor by accepting it. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, but what if I'm asking for too much? What if my standards are unrealistic? What if I'm the problem? Let me tell you something that might change everything. Wanting someone who's emotionally available, who communicates clearly, who shows up consistently, who values growth, who's willing to work through conflict, instead of running from it. That's not asking for too much. That's asking for the baseline. That's asking for the fundamental requirements of a healthy relationship. You're not asking for perfection. You're asking for someone who's actually ready to be in a relationship. And the fact that you've normalized settling for less, the fact that you've convinced yourself that basic emotional availability is some kind of luxury, that tells me how long you've been accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. Think about it like this. If you were hiring someone for a job, would you keep someone who showed up late, made excuses constantly, blamed everyone else for their mistakes, and refused to learn or grow? Would you keep telling yourself, well, maybe if I just manage them better, maybe if I just lower my expectations, maybe if I just work twice as hard to compensate for what they're not doing? No, you wouldn't. Because in a professional context, you understand that some people simply aren't qualified for the position. You understand that no amount of accommodation or adjustment on your part can make up for someone's fundamental lack of capability or willingness. But in relationships, you've been taught to do exactly that. You've been taught that if it's not working, you just need to love harder, communicate better, be more patient, give more chances. You've been taught that walking away means you failed, that ending it means you gave up too easily. And that's where the real damage happens. That's where you lose yourself, because you keep pouring everything you have into someone who was never capable of receiving it. You keep trying to force a connection with someone who fundamentally cannot, or will not meet you there. And the hardest part, you start to believe it's your fault. You start to think that if you just loved them better, communicated more clearly, tried harder, sacrificed more, then maybe they'd finally see you. Maybe they'd finally choose you. Maybe they'd finally become the person you need them to be. But here's the truth that took me years to accept. You cannot love someone into wholeness. You cannot heal someone who isn't committed to healing themselves. You cannot build a partnership with someone who refuses to show up as a partner. I tried. God knows I tried. I bent myself into impossible shapes. I silenced my needs so often that I forgot I had them. I made myself smaller and smaller, hoping that if I took up less space there'd be more room for them to grow. But that's not how it works. Because when you shrink yourself for someone else, you don't create space for their growth. You create a dynamic where your needs don't matter, where your pain is background noise, where your existence revolves entirely around managing their emotions, anticipating their reactions, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering their next shutdown or outburst. And you tell yourself it's love. You tell yourself this is what commitment looks like. You tell yourself that real love means staying through the hard times. But there's a difference between standing by someone through a season of struggle and slowly drowning because they refuse to learn how to swim. There's a difference between supporting someone's growth and becoming their emotional crutch while they make no effort to stand on their own. There's a difference between patience and self-abandonment. I had to learn that the hard way. I had to learn that staying doesn't always equal strength. Sometimes staying is the most destructive thing you can do to them and to yourself. Because when you keep accepting breadcrumbs, you teach them that breadcrumbs are enough. When you keep tolerating behavior that hurts you, you signal that your pain doesn't require change. You become complicit in your own diminishment. And that's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. That by staying, by hoping, by waiting for them to wake up and see your worth, you're actively participating in the pattern that's destroying you. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying it because someone needs to tell you what no one told me for years. Your loyalty to someone who doesn't cherish you is disloyalty to yourself. And here's what makes it even harder. Sometimes the person isn't cruel. They're not a monster. They might even love you in their limited way. But loving you in their limited way while you love them completely creates an imbalance that will eventually crush you. It's like trying to build a bridge where one side is made of steel and the other is made of paper. It doesn't matter how much effort the paper puts in, the structure is fundamentally unsound. I've watched people stay for decades in these kinds of situations. I've seen them explain away the imbalance, justify the inequality, make themselves smaller and smaller to fit into the narrow space their partner has designated for them. And you know what happens? They wake up one day and don't recognize themselves anymore. They've become so practiced at minimizing their needs, so skilled at contorting themselves into shapes that require less space, that they've forgotten what their original form even looked like. The person you were before you learned to accept less, do you even remember them? The one who had standards, who knew their worth, who wouldn't have tolerated being treated as optional. That person is still in there, buried under layers of compromise and accommodation, and hope that if you just love hard enough, it will be enough to transform the relationship into what you need it to be. But transformation doesn't work that way. You cannot love someone into loving you better. You cannot sacrifice yourself into being valued. You cannot make yourself small enough that your reasonable needs become unreasonable demands. And this is where we have to talk about the difference between compromise and self-abandonment, because people confuse these constantly. Compromise is when two people both adjust to create something that works for both. Self-abandonment is when one person continuously adjusts while the other remains fixed. Compromise is mutual, self-abandonment is one-sided. And if you're the only one bending, you're not in a relationship, you're in a hostage negotiation where you're both the hostage and the negotiator. Here's the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud, the people who demand you compromise the most are usually the ones compromising the least. They've built entire philosophies around why their boundaries are sacred while yours are suggestions. They'll tell you they're protecting their energy, while draining yours like a phone charger that only works one way. I watched this play out with a friend who kept shrinking herself for a partner who called it meeting him halfway. Except halfway kept moving. First it was her Friday nights, then her friends, then her career goals were too ambitious and creating distance. She kept compromising, kept adjusting, kept trying to find the magic formula that would finally be enough. The formula was simple: there was no amount of self-erasure that would satisfy someone who needed her small to feel big. You know what the saddest part was? She called it love. She wore her disappearing act like a badge of honor, proof of how committed she was, how mature, how unlike those selfish people who actually had standards. She'd been so conditioned to believe that love meant sacrifice that she couldn't see the difference between sacrifice and suicide. Because here's what they don't tell you in all those romantic movies: love shouldn't require you to become less. Real love, the kind that actually sustains, wants you bigger, brighter, more fully yourself. It doesn't ask you to dim your light. It brings sunglasses. The relationships worth having are the ones where both people are trying to out-compromise each other, where you're both racing to be more understanding, more flexible, more generous. That's not self-abandonment, that's mutual elevation. That's two people building something bigger than their individual egos. But when you're the only one stretching, when your flexibility is being mistaken for weakness and exploited as policy, that's not love, that's not even like, that's convenience with a relationship filter on it. We've normalized the bare minimum and called it excellence. We celebrate anniversaries like participation trophies. We made it another year. Congratulations, you coexisted in the same space without killing each other. That's not an achievement. That's just two people who haven't left yet. And here's the painful truth: nobody wants to hear most people stay together. Not because the relationship is good, but because leaving is hard. The inertia of shared Netflix accounts, joint bank statements, and a lease that doesn't expire until June. That's what's holding your relationship together. Not love, not passion, not even genuine companionship. Just the overwhelming inconvenience of untangling two lives that got knotted together by accident. I see couples who've been together for years, and they've completely stopped trying. They've stopped dating each other. They've stopped being curious about each other. They've stopped asking questions that matter. When was the last time you asked your partner about their dreams, their fears, what keeps them awake at 3 a.m.? When was the last time you genuinely listened to the answer? Instead, we ask the same rotation of surface-level questions. How was your day? What do you want for dinner? Did you pay the electric bill? We've reduced our partnerships to administrative exchanges. We're not lovers anymore. We're reluctant roommates with shared responsibilities and occasional physical contact. And the physical contact. Let's talk about that. The intimacy becomes scheduled, performative, obligatory. Tuesday night at 10:30 p.m., right after scrolling through Instagram, and before falling asleep. There's no spontaneity, no genuine desire, no raw hunger for each other. Just another item on the to-do list, checked off with the same enthusiasm as taking out the trash. This is what we're defending when we say relationships take work. We're defending our right to be mediocre, our permission to stop growing, our excuse to settle for someone who doesn't challenge us, inspire us, or make us want to be better humans. We've created an entire culture around making excuses for uninspiring relationships. Think about the language we use. Marriage is hard. Love isn't always butterflies. Real love is choosing them even when you don't feel like it. These aren't wisdom. They're surrender speeches dressed up as maturity. Yes, of course love evolves. The intoxicating rush of new romance doesn't last forever. And anyone expecting permanent fireworks is delusional. But there's a universe of difference between love maturing into something deeper and love deteriorating into something dull. One is wine aging into complexity. The other is milk going sour while you convince yourself it's supposed to taste that way. The tragedy is how many people confuse endurance with commitment. They wear their unhappiness like a badge of honor. We've been together 15 years becomes code for I've been tolerating this for 15 years. The length of the sentence becomes proof of love, rather than questioning whether you're actually living or just serving time. Here's what nobody wants to admit. Sometimes the work you're putting into your relationship isn't making it better. You're just working harder to maintain something that's fundamentally broken. It's like polishing a car that doesn't run. Sure, it looks better, but it still won't take you anywhere. I watch couples in therapy, not addressing core incompatibilities, not facing the truth that they want different lives, but learning communication techniques, as if the right words will somehow bridge the gap between two people who've been growing in opposite directions for years. You can learn to fight fair, to use I statements, to schedule weekly check-ins, but none of that fixes the fundamental problem. You're trying to force a connection that isn't naturally there anymore, if it ever was. And the saddest part, many people know this. Deep down they know, but they've invested so much time, money, shared history, combined families, social identity as a couple, that the sunk cost fallacy takes over. They think, well, I've already put in 5 years. If I leave now, all that was wasted. But here's the truth. They don't want to face staying doesn't unwaste those years. It just adds more years to the pile of wasted time. The sunk cost fallacy is powerful because it disguises itself as loyalty, commitment, and perseverance. We tell ourselves we're being faithful to our promises, we're honoring the relationship, we're not quitters. But there's a difference between commitment and captivity. Commitment is choosing to stay because you believe in the potential, and you're actively building something together. Captivity is staying because you're afraid of what you'll lose if you leave. I've seen people stay in dead relationships for decades, and every year the cost of leaving feels higher, because now they've invested even more. It's like doubling down on a bad bet, hoping that if you just keep playing, eventually you'll break even. You won't. The relationship market doesn't reward past investment, it rewards present value. And if the present value of your relationship is loneliness, resentment, and emotional distance, then all the history in the world doesn't make it worth staying. Now let me address something before you think I'm advocating for people to bail at the first sign of trouble. I'm not. Relationships require work. They require patience. They require riding out storms together. But there's a difference between a storm and a permanent climate. A storm is temporary difficulty, financial stress, health crisis, external pressure. These are things you weather together, and often you come out stronger on the other side. A permanent climate is when the fundamental structure of the relationship is broken, when you've fundamentally different values, when respect is gone, when you're not partners solving problems together but adversaries tolerating each other's existence. You can't just work harder on a relationship with a broken foundation. That's like trying to save a house by repainting it while the foundation crumbles. It might look better for a moment, but it's still collapsing. And here's what makes this even more tragic. The time you spend in the wrong relationship isn't just time you're not finding the right one. It's time you're spending becoming a different version of yourself. Every month, every year, in a fundamentally misaligned relationship changes you. It shapes your beliefs about what love is, what you deserve, what's possible. It creates patterns in your nervous system, stories in your mind, limits on your imagination of what partnership can be. I've seen people stay in mediocre relationships for 5 years, 7 years, a decade. And when they finally leave, they don't just have to find someone new. They have to rediscover who they are. They have to unlearn the habits of compromise they built. They have to remember what it feels like to be genuinely seen, genuinely excited, genuinely alive in love. The person you become in the wrong relationship isn't the person who attracts the right one. Think about that. If you're constantly managing someone's emotions, you become a manager, not a lover. If you're perpetually explaining yourself, you become defensive, not open. If you're always wondering if you're enough, you become small, not radiant. And here's the paradox that most people miss entirely. The moment you decide to leave, even before you actually go, something shifts. There's a dignity that returns. A self-respect that had been sleeping wakes up. You stop negotiating with reality. You stop pretending that acceptance is the same thing as happiness. I remember talking to a man who'd been married for 12 years in what he called a functional relationship. Functional. That's the word he used, like he was describing a kitchen appliance. And when I asked him what that meant, he said, "We don't fight much, we manage the kids well, we're good roommates." Good roommates. Imagine spending your one wild, precious temporary life, being good roommates with the person you once promised everything to. And here's what broke my heart. He thought that was normal. He thought that's what long-term love looked like. The fire goes out, the passion fades, and you just coexist, politely, efficiently, lifelessly. I watched them, these automatons in business casual, and felt a chill run through me, because they weren't wrong. They weren't making mistakes. They were just empty. And then it hit me. This is what the system does at scale. It doesn't just capture individuals. It captures entire cultures, entire workplaces, entire ways of being. You see, when one person chooses comfort over growth, that's personal. When a million people do it simultaneously, that's civilization choosing its direction. And right now we're choosing the path of least resistance. We're choosing the algorithm over the adventure. I started asking myself hard questions. When was the last time I'd felt truly uncomfortable? Not annoyed, uncomfortable. Not stressed by deadlines, uncomfortable with who I was becoming. When had I last pushed against my own boundaries? Not because I had to, but because growth demanded it. The answers weren't pretty. I realized I'd been optimizing my life like a spreadsheet, eliminating friction, maximizing efficiency, surrounding myself with people who agreed with me, content that confirmed what I already believed, routines that required zero adaptation. I'd built a beautiful prison and called it success. And here's the thing nobody tells you about comfortable prisons. They're incredibly hard to leave, because leaving requires admitting you've been complicit in your own captivity. It requires facing the fact that all those reasonable choices were actually micro-surrenders, small deaths of possibility. The algorithm knows this. It counts on this. It understands that humans will almost always choose the familiar over the transformative, the predictable over the profound, and so it feeds us more of what we already are, gently discouraging us from becoming what we might be. I think about the great spiritual traditions and they all understood something fundamental. Growth requires disruption. Transformation demands discomfort. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by getting more comfortable with crawling. But we've forgotten this ancient wisdom. We've traded the hero's journey for the customer's journey. We've replaced vision quests with content binges. We've substituted genuine transformation with the illusion of progress. New courses, new gadgets, new strategies that never quite change who we fundamentally are. The algorithm loves this version of self-improvement. It's perfectly designed for consumption. Buy this, watch that. 5 easy steps. No actual change required. And the really insidious part, we've built entire industries around this avoidance. Self-help has become self-soothing. We don't want transformation. We want permission to stay exactly as we are, while feeling like we're growing. I see it in my own patterns. That stack of unread books on my nightstand. Each one was supposed to change my life. I bought them with genuine intention. Felt that little spark of possibility. Maybe this one would be different. But here's what I've learned. Information without integration is just entertainment. Knowledge without application is just trivia. And insight without action is just procrastination with better vocabulary. The spiritual path isn't supposed to be comfortable. Real growth never is. When a seed breaks open to become a plant, the shell doesn't gently dissolve. It cracks. It splits. The process is violent and irreversible. But we want the plant without the breaking, the butterfly without the struggle in the cocoon, the strength without the resistance that builds it. I remember reading about how if you help a butterfly emerge from its cocoon, if you cut it open to spare it the struggle, it will never fly. Its wings won't develop properly. The struggle itself is what forces the fluid into the wings, making them strong enough to carry it. We are all cutting ourselves out of cocoons, prematurely. With kindness we tell ourselves, with self-compassion. But sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself is let yourself struggle with what's hard. Let yourself feel inadequate while you learn. Let yourself be a beginner who fails and looks foolish, and doesn't have it figured out yet. Because that's where real change lives, in the gap between who you are and who you're becoming, in the discomfort of not knowing, in the humility of being wrong about yourself. The practices that actually transformed my life weren't the ones that felt good. They were the ones that made me face what I'd been avoiding. Meditation that forced me to sit with my restless mind. Journaling that made me confront my patterns. Conversations that required me to be vulnerable instead of impressive. The algorithm can't give you that. The next video can't either, because transformation isn't content you consume. It's conflict you resolve within yourself, with yourself. That's why spiritual teachers don't just offer information. They offer friction. They create cognitive dissonance so intense you can't think your way out. You have to be your way through. The Buddha didn't hand out pamphlets on impermanence. He made people sit until their legs screamed and their minds unraveled. Gurdjieff insulted his students' intelligence until their egos cracked open. Ramana Maharshi asked one question, "Who am I?" knowing full well the answer would obliterate the questioner. You see, the teaching isn't in the answer. It's in the collapse that comes when you realize you've been asking the wrong question your entire life. But we don't want collapse. We want confirmation. We want a spiritual teacher who looks at our carefully constructed identity and says, yes, this is who you are, and here's how to optimize it. We want enlightenment that fits our schedule, awakening that doesn't interfere with our 5-year plan. And so we collect teachings like trading cards. I've got non-duality, I've got shadow work, I've got breathwork and plant medicine, and Vedic astrology. We mistake the menu for the meal, the map for the territory. the pointing finger for the moon. Here's what nobody tells you: the moment you think you understand, you've lost it. Understanding is a conclusion. Truth is an opening. Understanding gives you something to hold on to. Truth strips away everything you thought you could grip. I watch people in spiritual communities compete over who's more awake, who's had the deeper insight, who can quote more sutras or report more mystical experiences. It's the ego wearing a spiritual costume, playing the same old game with new vocabulary. Because here's the kicker: the ego loves spiritual progress. It loves levels and stages and awakenings. It loves the idea that I am evolving, I am growing, I am closer to enlightenment than I was yesterday. But what if there is no I to evolve? What if the entire project of self-improvement is just a dream character trying to wake itself up from within the dream? That's the final gateless gate. Not transcending the ego, not even witnessing it, but seeing through the whole apparatus, the watcher and the watched, the seeker and the sought, the journey and the destination. And when that falls away, what's left isn't some blissful state you achieve. It's the recognition that you never left home. You were never broken. There was never anything to fix, improve, or transcend. Just this, exactly as it is, without commentary, without conclusion. This is the ground zero of transformation. Not the transformation you imagined, not the better, shinier, more enlightened version of yourself that you've been chasing, but the collapse of the one who seeks transformation at all. You see, we've been approaching this backwards. We think first I'll become aware, then I'll be free. First I'll understand, then I'll be at peace. First I'll transcend the ego, then I'll rest. But awareness isn't something you achieve. It's what you already are. You're not trying to become aware. You're already the space in which all experience appears. The problem is you're so busy trying to get there that you overlook the fact that you've never left. It's like spending your whole life searching for your glasses while they're sitting on your face. The spiritual search is the ultimate distraction. It keeps you perpetually oriented toward a future moment when everything will finally click into place. And that future orientation is precisely what prevents you from recognizing what's already here. This moment, this breath, this hum of existence that's been here all along. I'm not saying practice is useless. Meditation, inquiry, contemplation, these have their place. But they're not taking you anywhere. At best, they're revealing what was never absent. At worst, they become another project for the ego, another achievement to pursue, another way to avoid the raw simplicity of now. The trap is subtle. You sit down to meditate thinking, this will make me more present. But the one who wants to be more present is already living in a future fantasy. The whole project is contaminated from the start. What if there's nothing to do? What if this is already it? Not the peaceful version, not the version where you figured it all out, but this version, the one with the restless mind, the one with the unresolved questions, the one with the lingering doubt. This is it, and the moment you stop trying to make it into something else, something shifts, not in your experience, but in your relationship to experience. You stop waiting, you stop resisting, you stop postponing your life until some imaginary future when you're finally ready. And in that stopping there's a strange kind of arrival, not because anything has changed, but because you've finally stopped leaving. The apartment where you live right now, the one you've been calling temporary for 3 years. What if this is it? What if there's no other place waiting for you? No future version where everything is finally arranged the way it's supposed to be. I'm not talking about settling. I'm talking about something more radical than that. I'm talking about the possibility that your life isn't a rehearsal for some better performance, that the people you see every day aren't placeholders for more interesting characters who'll show up later, that your work, however mundane it seems, isn't just killing time until your real purpose reveals itself. What if this is the thing itself? There's a particular kind of violence we do to the present moment by treating it as merely instrumental, as just the path to somewhere else. We walk through our days like tourists, passing through an airport, barely noticing where we are because we're so focused on the destination. But here's what I've noticed. The destination, when you arrive, immediately becomes another airport, another transition point, another place you're just passing through on the way to somewhere else. The pattern doesn't break when circumstances change. It breaks when you stop running it. I watched my neighbor spend 5 years talking about the novel he'd write when he finally had time. Then he retired, had all the time in the world, and suddenly it became about waiting until he'd read enough, researched enough, lived enough to have something worth saying. The conditions he was waiting for kept shape-shifting, but the waiting itself remained constant, because waiting wasn't actually about conditions, it was about protection. As long as his life was still ahead of him, still pending, still in the realm of possibility. It couldn't fail. It couldn't disappoint. It couldn't turn out to be smaller than he'd hoped. The future is where we keep our escape routes, all the versions of ourselves we might still become if things go differently, if we just wait a little longer. But those phantom futures cost us something. They cost us the aliveness that's only available right here, in this conversation, this meal, this afternoon light, coming through your actual window. You think you're keeping your options open, but what you're really doing is keeping yourself unavailable to what's already here. You're the person scrolling past the present because you're convinced the real thing hasn't shown up yet. You're like someone standing in a gallery full of original masterpieces, but you can't see them because you're too busy checking your phone for pictures of art. And the cruelest part, the thing you're waiting for isn't even real. It's a fantasy you've constructed from fragments. A movie scene here, a photograph there, something your friend said about their trip, something you read once that made you feel a particular way. You've stitched together this Frankenstein version of happiness, and now you're holding your actual life hostage until reality matches your collage. That's what all this spiritual seeking becomes for most people. Not a path to presence, but a sophisticated form of absence. You're not here, meditating. You're projecting yourself into some future where you finally figured it out, where you're the calm, centered person you imagine you should be. I watch people in meditation retreats doing this constantly. Eyes closed, posture perfect, but they're not here. They're 3 weeks in the future, imagining how peaceful they'll be once the retreat is over. Or they're comparing their experience to what the teacher described. Or they're scanning their body for the sensations they're supposed to feel. Everywhere except here. Everywhere except now. The mind is breathtakingly creative in its avoidance techniques. It'll even use spiritual practice as a way to avoid being present. That's the ultimate irony. You take up meditation to be more present, but then you're so focused on doing it right, on having the correct experience, on becoming the person who meditates well, that you miss the entire point. This is what I mean when I say seeking becomes the obstacle. At some point the search itself becomes the problem, not because there's nothing to find, but because what you're looking for is doing the looking. You're like someone frantically searching for their glasses while wearing them, and everyone keeps telling you they're on your face, but you can't hear them because you're too busy searching. The present moment doesn't need you to find it, it needs you to stop running from it. And here's the hardest part to accept. You've been training yourself to run for years, maybe decades. Every time you felt uncomfortable, you reached for your phone. Every time you felt lonely, you opened an app. Every time you felt bored, you created drama. You've built neural pathways in your brain that associate stillness with danger and distraction with safety. Your nervous system has learned that peace is the problem and chaos is the solution. So when you finally try to sit still, your body panics. Your mind screams. Every cell in your being tells you that something is wrong, that you need to move, to do, to fix, to achieve something. But nothing is wrong. You're just finally stopping the running. And the moment you stop running, you feel everything you've been running from. The grief you never processed, the anger you swallowed, the fear you numbed, the loneliness you covered up with noise. It all comes flooding in. And your first instinct is to start running again, to prove to yourself that you were right to stay busy. That stillness really is dangerous. But if you can just sit there, if you can let those feelings wash through you without drowning in them, something miraculous happens. They pass. The wave crashes, and then it recedes. And beneath all that turbulence, there's something solid, something that was there all along, waiting for you to notice it. Your own presence, your own being, not your thoughts about yourself, not your story, not your identity, just the simple undeniable fact that you exist, that you're here. That awareness itself is happening through you. And that awareness doesn't need improvement. It doesn't need a promotion or validation or a better life. It just is. Completely whole, completely sufficient, watching everything else come and go. And when you rest as that just this simple undeniable presence that's already here, something remarkable happens in your everyday life. You stop arguing with reality. Not because you've become passive or resigned, but because you finally understand that reality isn't personal. The weather doesn't rain *at you. Traffic doesn't conspire against you. That person who cut you off wasn't sent by the universe to test your patience. Things just happen, constantly, ceaselessly, like waves on an ocean. And you, the awareness, you're not the waves. You're not even riding the waves. You're the vast depth beneath all of it, untouched, unmoved, completely at peace. This doesn't mean you become emotionless or detached. Far from it, when you're no longer desperately trying to control every wave, you can actually appreciate each one more fully. The joy becomes richer because you're not clinging to it. The sadness becomes bearable because you're not resisting it. The anger moves through quickly because you're not feeding it with stories about how things should be different. You become responsive instead of reactive. Someone criticizes you, and instead of that immediate contraction, that defensive tightening, that mental scrambling to protect your self-image, there's just space, a moment of silence, a breath, and then if a response is needed, it comes from clarity rather than from wound. This is what the ancient texts call freedom, not freedom asterisk from asterisk life, but freedom asterisk within it. You still have preferences, you still make choices, you still work toward goals and care deeply about things and people. But underneath all of that activity, there's this unshakable knowing, asterisk I am not my story, I am not my circumstances, I am not even my thoughts about my circumstances, I am the awareness in which all of this unfolds. And that awareness has never been born, will never die, cannot be improved or diminished, cannot be achieved or lost. It's what you've always been, right here, right now, reading these words. The search ends the moment you realize you've never actually been lost. You've just been so busy looking for yourself that you missed the obvious. The looker is what you're looking for. The seeker is the sauced. And here's what happens when that recognition lands, not intellectually, but in the marrow of your being. Everything relaxes, the clenching stops, the grasping releases. You stop performing spirituality and start living it. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about awakening. It's not a peak experience. It's not fireworks and visions and cosmic downloads. It's simpler than that. It's the quiet recognition that you've been breathing this whole time without trying, that your heart has been beating without instruction, that life has been living itself through you all along. You've been trying to become conscious, but consciousness was never the achievement. It was always the achiever. You've been trying to find peace, but peace was never a destination. It was the spaciousness you moved through while you were searching. Think about deep sleep. Every night you disappear. Your name dissolves. Your problems evaporate. Your identity, everything you think you are, completely vanishes. And yet something remains. Something aware enough to report upon waking. I slept deeply. Who is that? Who remains when the person you think you are completely dissolves? That's what you are. Not the character that appears during waking hours. Not the thoughts that claim ownership of experience. But that which remains when everything else falls away. The unchanging awareness that watches thoughts come and go. Watches the body age. Watches circumstances shift. And never itself changes. You are that. You've always been that. You'll always be that. The entire spiritual search is just that, pretending it isn't. Playing hide and seek with itself, forgetting on purpose so it can remember with wonder. So stop waiting for the big moment. Stop preparing for enlightenment, like it's a destination you haven't reached yet. You are the light. You're just so close to it you keep mistaking it for darkness. The eye cannot see itself, but that doesn't mean it's not there. What you're looking for is looking. What you're seeking is seeing. What you're trying to become you already are. And the moment you stop trying to get there, is the moment you realize you've never left. This is it, right here, right now. This breath, this heartbeat, this mysterious awareness reading these words. Not perfect, not special, just what is, just what's always been, just what could never not be. You are that.